My name is Shilpi Srivastava, and I'm an English teacher for the last 20 years. So today, what I'm going to present, as I discussed in my last video, that we are going to. I was explaining how a long answer should be written, especially for your examination for the class 10th, 9th. The stories, the questions which are for 8 or 15 marks. All right. And so today in this video, as I promised, I'm going to explain one of the stories from your short stories, and I will also let you know how to handle the questions of this particular story. So the story that I'm going to discuss today is The Little Match Girl. So I'm going to present the presentation, and along with it, with every slide, I'm going to explain each and every aspect of the story. So let's begin. All right. So this is the little match girl that we are going to begin. So first, I'll just show you actually the picture of the little match girl. Now, why am I showing you the photograph of the little match girl? Is because um, the setting of the story is very important, as I had mentioned in my last video, that wherever the character belongs to, that society, that environment, that culture has an impact on the character. So here, the little match girl, this story belongs to Denmark, which is one of the Scandinavian countries, and it is, as it is very cold in Europe, and during the winter season, it snows a lot. So here you can see the little girl who's shivering. She's folded her arms around her. She wrapped herself in her arms, and as you can see in the background, there it is snowing. So this is the setting of the story. It was just an introduction, a little introduction to let you know actually what the story is. So as according to what I told you yesterday in my last video, you need to know a little about the author. All right, you need to know because in your long answer, when you begin your answer, you need to introduce the author, as I told you. So therefore, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Hans Christian Andersen, who's the writer of this story. So Andersen was born on April 2, 1805 in Denmark. Hans Andersen Sr. died in 1816. And in 1819, now Andersen Sr. was his father. All right. So in Europe, there was a trend, like India, some states of India, they have this culture that you need to write your father's name along with your name. All right. Similarly, in Europe, mostly there was a trend that the children adopted the middle name or the last name was, it is very natural, but some part of their father's name or their grandfather's name into their name. So Hans Christian Senior Andersen Senior was his father. So in 1819, Andersen traveled to Copenhagen to work as an actor. He returned to school after a short time, supported by a patron named Jonas Collin. Now, a patron is a person who funds your organization. For example, there are NGOs, and the NGOs need money. So where do they get this money from? Sometimes the government provides funds, or sometimes it is they get themselves attached to some corporate companies who give money. So that is funding. So in the olden days, it was mostly the king or some royal person. Like, if I give you the example of Akbar. So Akbar had 9 gems in his court. So Akbar was their patron, because these 9 people who were there, they were talented in a particular field. So they did not do any other job. So how did they fend themselves? It was the money that was provided by Akbar. So he was funding them. So similarly here, Jonas Collin was the one who funded him, and he began writing during this period at Collin's urging, but was discouraged from continuing by his teachers. So in 1835, Andersen began producing fairy tales. Yes, this is very important. Now, the first 2 points of the introduction you can miss out on. But then this is very important that you have to write about Anderson, because he is the one who actually introduced the fairy tales like the Little Mermaid, the Emperor's New Clothes, and the Ugly Duckling. Because in those days, the time period that I'm talking about, there were no stories being written for children. All right, there were no stories written for children, so therefore, it was needed. Somebody was needed to write, such stories for children, and Anderson is the one who started writing the fairy tales. And I will tell you why he started writing the fairy tales. What was the need for writing fairy tales for children? How come the fairy tales came into existence? Coming to the next slide, the background of the story. All right, so it is very important to know the background of the story. So the story is based in the 17th century Victorian era. So in that time, now what was the period like? Like, for example, when we talk about pre-independence period in India. So when we say pre-independence period in India, then we start imagining the Britishers and how the people were, slaves under them. So similarly here too, when I'm saying that Victorian era, so there are particular features of every era. So here I'm going to describe what was the Victorian era like and why is it important to know about it regarding this story. Now that was the time of industrial revolution when child labor was prevalent. So child labor was prevalent means, if you know a little about the European history, there was nothing known as the middle class that we know of now. Like in the modern society, we have three layers of society: the rich, the capitalists, the industrialists, all those rich people. And then the working class, the middle class, who are known as the service class, people who do jobs and get their salaries. And the third layer as the poor people, the daily wage, people who earn the daily wages, laborers, etc. But in the Victorian era, before the Industrial Revolution happened, there were nothing known as a service class. They were either the rich, the king and the royalty. Before them was the clergy, the church. So they were also very rich because they were patronized by the king and the royal people, and people also paid taxes to them. Second was the royalty, and third were the poor people, the farmers. So when this industrial revolution happened, what happened? These poor people got an opportunity to work in these factories and industries and earn their living. Now, farming is a business which doesn't, reassure you a steady income. It depends all on the climate. So when these industries were being set up and factories were being set up by these rich people, the capitalists, these poor people got an opportunity to work in these factories and earn their daily living. Now, in working in a factory or working for in a job, you have a steady income. By the end of the month, you will get some money. So that is why Industrial Revolution. So the people who were living in the villages, they started migrating from there towards the main cities like London and around London. And in many other European countries like Denmark, etc., these factories were being set up. Children were treated as miniature adults. Yes. Now, in these factories, there were adults who were working, but then these factories and industries also required children. Now, you can ask me a question: why children? Because children, for example, in today's modern world, there are many factories which need children because, for example, making cigarettes or making silk clothes or embroideries, etc. Children have a very tender hand, So some materials, some products require very soft hands to work upon them. And hence child labor is encouraged. So in those days, not only there were certain factories which required children to work, but also children were doing menial jobs like cleaning the factories, cleaning the machines. There were certain areas of the factory, certain machines where only small hands could get in to clean. An adult could not clean them. The other thing was that children could be very easily trained, and children would not be repulsive. They would not, be rebellious so much, and they could work for long hours without cribbing or crying. and they could work on very minimal wages. They would not argue for increasing their wages. So hence children were treated as miniature adults, means they were not regarded as children, but they were regarded as adults, and they were made to work in these factories. The other reason was that the families who came to settle in England, in not particularly England, but in any other parts of Europe like Denmark, where the story belongs to, the children, as you know, in India, you also know that poor families, they do not send their children to school, but they make their children work, because they need more. They do not, one person earning for them is not suffice for the entire family. So therefore in those days also, the poor people did not send their children to schools, but they rather employed them along with them in the same factory or wherever they were working, so that the family could have suffice for the entire family. And schools were actually, education was only meant for the privileged class. Yes, so that is, only the rich children, the children belonging to the royal families, etc., could attend school. The Little Match Girl also belongs to one of these poor class. Charles Dickens' novels also reflects upon the hardships of the labor class. Yes, if you have heard of the novels like Great Expectations or David Copperfield. So all these are stories that do talk about the condition, the social condition, and the condition of the poor at that time. Indifference towards the poor class is very well brought out in the story. So what is the main theme of the story is two things. First of all, the plight of the children of the poor families, and the second thing, how society had become so indifferent towards this poor class. They did not care for these poor people. They had become very self-centered and selfish. So let's proceed with the story. The character of the girl. Yes. So here I'm going to tell you who was this girl, what is so special about this girl, so that when we read this story and when we understand the story, you get an entire picture of it. No name has been given to the girl. Yes. So in the story, usually what happens when you read a story, the character is given a name. For example, when you read Cinderella, there is a name given to the girl, Cinderella. All right. So, but then here, the girl has not been given any name, although she is the protagonist of the story. The reason why she has not been given any name is mainly because maybe the author wanted to represent this girl. This girl was representing the entire class of those children who belong to the poor families. So it was not a particular person he's talking about, but he's talking about a girl who's representing that entire poor society. As the author wants to show that this was the general condition of the poor children, they had no significance in the society. She's wearing torn clothes, her shoes belong to her mother. All right, so when you begin this story, you see that the girl is wearing tattered clothes, her hair is disheveled, and the shoes also that she's wearing belongs to her mother. So you can see the degree or the pathetic condition that this girl belongs to. That not even she has a pair of shoes that could keep her warm, because when you want to, in winters, you wear tight clothes so that they keep you warm. But here the girl is not even wearing warm shoes. The shoes are useless for her because they don't even fit her. She was scared of her father. Yes, when you see it proceed in the story, where this little match girl is unable to sell her matchboxes, nobody buys the matches from her, so she's scared to go back home, because she feels her father is going to beat her up because she has not been able to get any penny back home. So you can see that she feels very scared of her father. And usually when in an ordinary family, what happens, that is, when you return, when the school gets over, the children are very excited to go back home because they feel they'll be getting a warm welcome, and your home is the place where you feel very relaxed. But here for the girl, home is also not a place for her to feel happy. She's rather scared. She doesn't know how she's going to face her father. It seems, looking at her condition, that her family did not care for her. Yes, when when we go through the story and when we see that the girl is wearing such poor clothes, she doesn't have a scarf over her head, and she is wearing shoes which belongs to her mother. And if you remember in the story, she even loses her shoes. One of the she tries to escape from between the carriages, horse carriages which were coming past her. And in that rush, one of her shoes goes out of her feet, and one boy picks up the other shoe and he runs away, telling her that they're so big that when he's going to have his children, it will serve as a cradle. All right, so therefore now she becomes barefoot. So it shows that her family was rather not very caring for her. Because even though if she was going out to sell matchboxes, the family could have provided her some warm clothes, some shoes, proper shoes, so that she could keep herself warm out in the winters. She dreamt and had visions to give her happiness. She was famished and was freezing in the cold. Yes, indeed. So, as the story proceeds, what happens is that after the evening sets in, and she's still not successful in selling her matches. What happens? She sits in a corner, and she starts lighting her matches one by one in order to keep herself warm. And in the light of those matches, one single match, she has a vision. If you remember, she first has a vision of a brass stove, which has got a fire net, and she feels as if she's feeling very warm and the warmth of the fire, and she curls herself, she draws her feet inside her, and she imagines that she's sitting in front of that stove and feeling the warmth. Then as the story proceeds and she lights another match, she can see through the wall of that house that is there, where the corner she was sitting, a roasted goose. And roasted goose is something which is, a goose and turkey are all a part of celebration. So if you remember, the story is set on a New Year's Eve, and New Year's Eve comes after Christmas. So the celebration starts from Christmas and continues till the New Year's Eve. So she can even smell the roasted goose. And then when she again lights the match, what can she see is the vision of a grandmother who is already dead, but then she sees her grandmother, and she can see that her grandmother comes and makes her very happy, loves her, and finally she takes her away with her. All right, so these are the visions. All right, and why does she dream? Because you see, what is the psychology behind it? She tried to live moments of happiness in her dreams. So that is, when you're depressed, when you're feeling unhappy, sometimes you like to imagine good things. You get back, either you recover some moments from your past which are happy moments, and then you try to make yourself happy, or you dream into the future that things are going to be better, things are going to look brighter, and somehow you try to come out of that depression. So here even the girl had found her solace in these hallucinations, in these visions that she was having. And further, as we see that this girl, she did not cry out for any kind of help. So what do we see is that in this, that the girl actually was a very, had a lot of self-respect. She did not cry out for help. She did not beg in front of people, for any kind of money. And she simply sits in the corner trying to keep herself warm. She did not even knock at any door. Now, how does this reflect upon the society at that time? A question might come that how does the story of the little match girl reflect upon the society at that time? So no one had mercy on her. Yes, it's not that people had not seen her. People did see her. If you remember in the story, as the story ends, and in the morning, people discover the frozen dead body of that girl. And one of them remarks that, oh my God, and they see some matches which were already burnt and some matches which were left unburnt. So somebody remarks that the girl, poor girl, she was trying to keep herself warm. So so this means that even before, when she was trying to sell her matches the previous evening, people had not taken care of her. People had not even noticed her, her poor condition. Today, if we go on a road and we see a child, who's very poor, especially on a winter evening, out of kindness, what do? We sometimes give away, our old clothes to the child, or maybe We give some money to the child or something to eat. But look at the society at that time. People did not notice her, people did not help her. The Victorian society was indifferent to the plight of these children. Yes, it reflects upon the Victorian age. That age was an age of materialism, where people were only running after wealth. They wanted to garner a lot of money, and everybody had become very selfish and self-centered. The rich people, they did not, they set up their factories to gain profits, but these profits were not shared with the laborers. All right, and the people who were working in the factories, they were so engrossed in their own lives, building up their own wealth, that they did not care for each other. The ethics in that society had already gone away. So many of the poets, if you read, for example, Thomas Hardy, or um, if you read other poets belonging to that age, then Tennyson, etc., you will see that they also reflect upon this particular quality of that Victorian era. That is, that people had become very materialistic. They had forgotten about all the ethics and morals. And if you read if you read Charles Dickens stories, you will see how children who were going to the orphanages were children, born out of wedlocks. They were illegitimate children. Nobody cared for them. So, all right. So, therefore, here also, the story is a very powerful reflection upon the society at that time. People gathered to see her frozen dead body. Yes, if you remember the end of the story, people gathered to see the dead body. So don't you think that the people might have seen the girl the previous evening? No one had cared to even buy even a single matchbox out of compassion. Sometimes what happens, some vendors come to you and they tell you, even though you do not need something, but if an old person is selling, out of compassion, out of kindness, you do buy, some item out from that person. But here they did not bother to do that. It was New Year's Eve. However, the people had forgotten the basic tenets of Christianity. Yes, they had celebrated Christmas, and Christmas is, what is Christmas? Christmas is the celebration of the birth of Jesus. And who was Jesus? What did he teach us? Jesus taught the basic human values of love and kindness. If you read the parables, if you go through the Bible, the stories and the parables, they reflect upon that Jesus only served the poor. He even tells, the morals of the story is that when you serve the poor, you are actually serving God. But then people had forgotten about these teachings of Jesus Christ. For them, Christmas was only a celebration to bring the family together, have a nice feast, exchange gifts, etc. So that's all what Christmas was meant for. And even New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is, a part where you realize how you have led your life throughout the previous year, the mistakes that you have made, and the resolutions that you take up. But here again, people did not bother about the significance of it. For them, it was just a mere celebration. Love and kindness was forgotten. They were selfish and careless. The visions and hallucinations, the significance. Yes. So the question that usually comes in your board exams is, what are the significance of the visions and hallucinations that the girl had? Let me explain what is an hallucination first. Hallucinations is something that you imagine when it is not there in its physical entity. Right. So in psychology, it is taken as a disease, a mental disease, but then a mental disorder. But then here, a hallucination of that girl is not in that context. It doesn't mean that the girl was suffering from a mental disorder. No, it wasn't like that. The girl was hallucinating because she could see her grandmother. She could see through the wall. She felt as if she could see a brass stove in front of her. This was a product of her imagination, as I told you in my previous, just a few minutes back, that, in order to get out of that situation of hopelessness, out of that fear that she had of her father, she had started imagining things to keep herself happy. So hallucinations and dreams happen when a person is depressed. And then she wants to escape reality. All right, because when do you dream? As I told you, when you're depressed and your present situation is just not giving you any positive result, then you start escaping reality when you're not finding a solution. Sometimes some people go off to sleep, sometimes some people, but this is the reason people get into addiction, or they become depressed and they start imagining things. But here, she was not mentally depressed, as I told. She had no mental disorder, but here her imagination and her entire thing was actually to escape reality. What reality? The reality of her poor condition, the reality that she was freezing to death, the reality that she was scared of her father. So she wanted to find comfort and happiness in the dreams. The girl had nothing good around her. Going back home was as torturous as the chilly wind. Hunger, cold, and the cruelty of her father all led to her hallucination. At least in order to see those visions, she burnt the matchsticks. She burnt the matchsticks one after the other, not only to keep herself warm, but the matchstick has a significance. The matchstick, the little light that emerged from the matchstick was a light of hope, was a ray of hope for her. Because as we know, a matchstick cannot give you warmth, right? But then, she was trying her best to do what she could to keep herself alive. So what do you call in Hindi? Tinke ka Sahara. That is what she was trying to do. But then, this also signifies that every matchstick that she lit was actually a ray of hope. She tried to survive the cold, however, could not do so. The significance of the new year is symbolized here. For people, it was time for celebrations. They had forgotten the basis of these celebrations. Now, these are the lessons of the story. The story has a moral lesson, all right? It's not just a reflection upon the society at that time, but as you know, every fairy tale has a moral lesson. I'm sorry for this. So every moral lesson has a story. Every story has a moral lesson. So, for example, Cinderella tells you that you should not lose your hope. You have a guardian angel. If you pray, things will materialize. All right, and the ugly duckling tells you that sometimes you feel that you are less than other people, but you have to discover your own talents and you have to discover your own beauty and get your confidence back. So here, the moral of the story is that the match girl reminds us that we have forgotten what religion teaches us, what our faith teaches us. For us, our religion has become only as merely a day of celebration. Whatever festivals we celebrate are only becoming a symbol of celebration. The teachings behind it, the teachings of our faith, the basic values that we have are being forgotten. So this is what it says: the Lord raises the humble. That is, in the Bible, it is written that the Lord, the more humble you are, the more submissive you are, God loves you. All right, and here, the kingdom of heaven belongs to the children. People have become materialistic. So these two important factors, that the kingdom of heaven belongs to the children and the Lord raises the humble, people have forgotten these basic lessons of Christianity. All right, there is a parable that refers to it. So if you want, you can search on Google. You can say the parable about the children. So here, in a very concrete manner, in a very, very specific manner, Christ has mentioned that your heart should be as pure as a child. If you have a heart which is as pure as a child, you are welcome to the kingdom of heaven. But people were forgetting all this. They did not take care of this child. They had just brushed past her. Nobody even cared to buy a single match from her. So all this happened, and then they were not humble. Had they been humble, they would have realized that wealth is meant to be shared with others. If you have money, you need to share whatever happiness you have in your life with the poor people. All right? So this is how you will handle the question. Now, the last part is the symbolism and imagery. A lot of symbols have been used in the story, and lots of imagery has been used in the story. As I mentioned in the last slide, the imagery of the matchstick is, it is not only keeping herself warm, but then also giving her a ray of hope. Imagery has been used to highlight the pain and the suffering of the girl. Her tattered clothes, her head without a scarf, her loose shoes, and the snowing, the wind, the dark evening. All this is a setting which is highlighting the pain and suffering of the girl. So, this is the visual imagery: the roasted goose, the stove, and the Christmas tree. Now, let me tell you, why is imagery used? When an author wants to make his readers sensitive, when the author wants the reader to get involved with the character, then he uses the imagery. Like in movies, you see, when they have to see show a love song, they go onto the mountains of Switzerland because they want to enhance this emotion of love. They want to show to, they want the audience to see that love is a very lovely feeling. Love is something which takes you on another plane altogether, and everything seems to be very beautiful around you when you are in love with somebody. So this is why how the author has used imagery. Authors, not only Anderson but other authors also, when they want to create a certain emotion in the readers, when they want the readers to get involved in the story and imagine as if the story is happening right in front of them, they use this kind of an imagery. So, visual imagery is when they describe sceneries in front of you: the roasted goose, the stove, and the Christmas tree that the girl sees, when she is sitting, and yes, the grandmother that she also sees. So, all these are visual imageries. So, by through these imageries, the author wants to show you, wants to understand the psychology of the girl, that the pain, the suffering that she was going through, what kind of relief did she want? So you also start feeling the same for her, that yes, she's so, you understand that, when she sees the goose, roasted goose, when she imagines that, then you also feel that yes, the girl is absolutely hungry. Oh, she's starving. Oh, she is famished. When she sees the stove, the brass stove, you feel, oh, she is freezing with cold. She is almost getting frozen. The Christmas tree tells you that she is lacking that celebration in her life. She's yearning for that celebration. For her, Christmas is not what it is for others. So you start empathizing with the girl. You start feeling sympathetic towards the girl. Then olfactory is smell of the goose. Olfactory is when you can smell, the sense of smell. Tactile, sense of touch. Her movement in the winter, and her grandmother's touch, which finally, she comes and caresses her and then takes her away. The light at the end of the story. The light at the end of the story symbolizes the light of God. So this is all about the little match girl. I hope that I have been able to clear the basis of the story, all that is important in the story. And in my next video, I will read the story and I will share it with you, the explanations. Hope I would like your comments also, anything that this is my second video, so I would like you to comment on it as to how I can further improve it. Thank you so much. So goodbye for now, and I will, in my next video, which is going to come up very soon, I'm going to take up as to the story itself, the important paragraphs and the explanations. Thank you.